Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. On to satellite imagery. There are no watches, warnings, or advisories for either weather or rivers or streams anywhere around the state. So jumping right into satellite imagery, and you can see a distinct lack of storminess here. A few clouds, one weakening band right through here was a former frontal boundary, quite weak now, and another one developing back through here. This one more or less stalled out over the central Aleutians around AKwx, and then a little bit of light rain at times today, otherwise dry for the eastern Bering Sea, and then lots of sunshine over interior Alaska. Have some clouds sort of slipping on down, mainly along the central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but those of the VFR variety, VFR conditions along just about all the Arctic coast today, with those ceilings anywhere from 6,000 feet or better, but so not as bad as that may look up there for that area, but lots of sunshine all the way down in across Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula area. And then for the southeast coast, couple of surges of moisture coming northwestward here, with the main low center down to the south. Another development here, another boundary, weakening boundary through this area, really just producing clouds over the northern panhandle. And then this batch of moisture producing a little more in the way of significant rainfall, although nothing heavy, over the southern areas. And we'll look on the chart today. You can see the initial boundary coming northward and washing out. Isolated showers with that, but nothing too heavy at all. A little more extensive area of rain down to the south there over the southern panhandle in toward Dixon Entrance, and then yet another frontal boundary down farther down to the south that'll be tracking northward, and about 1/4 inch of rain falling at Annette Island, while Ketchikan had about roughly 2/10 inch fell during the day today. And actually this area will be shifting northward, so look for rainfall and showers to increase some over the central panhandle later on tonight. Otherwise, high pressure entrenched over the interior with 1,025 millibar high center up there just near or east of Old Crow. Another one back here off the southwest coast, west of Nunivak Island, about 1,028 millibars. And that keeping this storminess off to the south and southwest. Again, one weak boundary right through here. That stalled out over the AKwx area, and they only picked up, though, about 1/1600ths of an inch or so of precipitation. Actually, 1,200ths falling today in the 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And another little bit stronger system down to the south, coming over the top of this ridge, weak trough, and brought areas of low clouds and maybe some fog and drizzle from anywhere around St. Lawrence Island northward through the Bering Strait into the Chukchi Sea area, and kind of breezy there on the coast with maybe 20-25 mile an hour winds. But there is a small craft advisory out through tonight for the western Arctic coast from the Cape Thompson area northeastward, and otherwise winds will be light. And moving to tonight, you can see that trough kind of hugs up along the coastline there, so that's going to keep the flying conditions lower. But it looks like the moisture may graze the central coast and should stay off the east side up there. No change over interior Alaska, mostly clear skies, light winds. And Palmer seeing wind gusts out of the northeast today as high as 37 miles an hour and about 30 miles an hour there in the greater Valdez area. And those will diminish here this evening, this evening, and should be lighter overnight tonight. Still a lingering shower possible over the Wrangell Mountains, but that's pretty isolated there, and even where it does fall, nothing significant expected. Low clouds, fog, probably some drizzle possible on the north shore of the Alaska Peninsula with very light winds right up across the Permafrost with this ridge axis right through here to the 1027 millibar center. And this westerly flow, that's what's keeping that moisture in across St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait on up to the northwest coast. This trough shifting westward, and so that's taking whatever moisture was left from the former front today and pulling it back towards Shemya. Rain, light rain, or drizzle and fog out that way, so drying out here for the Adak-Atka area, but staying cloudy with possible fog with those east winds starting to pick up a little bit, and we'll be looking at small craft advisories late tonight and tomorrow for that area. Otherwise, the southeast coast for tonight, that next front pushes up, so that's going to bring another chance of rain into the south coast. So it looks like gale warnings late tonight developing, and will continue through tomorrow here for the southern panhandle area. Actually, the off the coast of Prince of Wales Island in that zone with lighter winds on up to the north, but chance of rain continues through tomorrow over the southern panhandle, but the bulk of the moisture shifting in across the Queen Charlotte Islands into British Columbia. Looks mostly sunny up north there from possibly, hopefully, Sitka on into the greater Juneau area, Haines, Skagway, and the North Gulf Coast, staying in the sunshine with the clouds remaining offshore. So Yakutat, Cordova, and Prince William Sound, another sunny day tomorrow, but winds will probably be lighter, not quite as gusty as they were today in these areas I spoke of. And it looks like nothing but sun up into the Tanana Valley and back to the northwest, maybe in the western Arctic coast. But this trough dropping southward will bring clouds and IFR back into the eastern Arctic coast there. But amounts will be light. But look for definitely, possibly IFR flying conditions throughout much of the day. Same thing out here over the Bering Sea. This huge high continues to sit out in the center there, southwest of St. Matthew Island. Light westerly flow on the north side of that keeps it cloudy with maybe some drizzle, but no organized or even weak troughs tomorrow in this area. Low clouds and fog, probably through the Bering Strait into the Chukchi Sea under that other high center. And now we're seeing the gradient tighten up a little bit here over the central Aleutians. So small craft advisories coming into the forecast for the central Aleutians through tomorrow. It looks like the rain, for the most part, other than some drizzle or fog, looks like the main rain will stay south of the Aleutians at least through tomorrow. So taking a look at first day of the week, Monday, first work day of the week, the main rain band actually shifts a little farther to the south. And just the possibility of the low clouds, fog, and drizzle, high pressure continuing to control the weather in the Bering Sea. And then occasionally a very weak disturbance slips over the top like this one will and bring a return to the drizzle, fog, and IFR flying conditions there from St. Matthew Island across Savunga and Gamble into the Teller Wales area with widespread fog over the Chukchi Sea to the western Arctic coast. High pressure up there over the Arctic. That'll circulate some chillier air down and some leftover moisture, or linking up with some leftover moisture. Could see a little bit of light snowfall, maybe, if it cools off enough, but mixed conditions. Whatever falls will be quite light. And look for fog and probably some IFR to go along with it. Another sunny day here in interior Alaska. Look for highs, Susitna Valley, possibly into the lower 70s. Definitely 60s across southern Alaska here. Sunshine, Kodiak Island with that continued light northwest wind flow. Sunshine back across Kuskokwim Valley, picking up the clouds now in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area, northward across Norton Sound there, Seward Peninsula area. And sunshine beginning to take over the southeast coast as well, with, of course, warming temperatures with that. Even the southern areas drying out now, all those showers shifting off with that weakening low center. They'll all be along the British Columbia coast or inland, so looking for a improving trend there across the panhandle over the next couple of days. And for the lows down that way tonight, not too bad, 45 to 50 or 51 there, and dropping near a little below freezing here from the Copper River Basin, actually into the upper 20s, say for Gulkana, Copper Center, and near freezing there for the Fairbanks area. 23 forecast low for Eagle, 31 for Yukon, milder, 35 to 40 eastern Arctic coast, and into the mid-40s back to the west, 40s southward through the Bering Strait and the southwest coast, and looks like mid-30s to near 40 for south central Alaska, upper 40s for the Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, 65 to 70, Susitna, Matanuska Valley into the Kenai Peninsula, 60-65 Bristol Bay, mostly in the 55 to 60 degree range through the central interior areas, and near 50 for the Brooks Range, 40s along the Arctic coast, upper 50s in the Aleutians, and the Panhandle looking pretty good, mid-60s there in some locations, a little cooler to the south, and the lows, no change really, about the same as what we've seen here for the low temperatures, with maybe a little bit of warming there over the eastern interior areas, but still dropping down close to freezing in many areas from the Copper River Basin and the eastern Arctic coast to near 50 out over the Bering Sea. Highs for Monday afternoon, 65 to 75 to sit in the Matanuska Valley with brilliant sunshine again into Bristol Bay, mid to upper 60s. 60s here across the southwest interior, Tanana Valley edging up into the lower 60s, and even warmer in the Panhandle with highs in the upper 60s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flight weather graphic for Sunday morning showing the IFR here from the Arctic Ocean coming down across the central western Arctic coast and then southward now across the northwest here, right across the Long Mountains and Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, narrow band along the southwest coast here, but South and Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Bay, Bristol Bay, all VFR, Kodiak, North Gulf Coast, Gulf of Alaska, VFR northward, all the way to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. You can see the marginal VFR, a fair distance to the north. VFR here, all of the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, no change. VFR, entire Gulf of Alaska, southeast coast, and from Prince William Sound here, all the way over to Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, right up the river valley, and even the Yukon River Valley, and then into the interior, good VFR. Marginal VFR now covering a good portion of the northwest here in the, looks like probably the Kobuk Valley, and right along the portions of the Alaska or Brooks Range. IFR now in along just about all the Arctic coast, and from Kotzebue Sound, Kivalina, on down St. Lawrence Island, pushing into Norton Sound, Pribilofs, and much of the Bering Sea, but just about all the Aleutians become VFR. And for Monday morning, IFR, North Coast and areas of the North Slope, another big zone here extending from the Chukchi Sea into the Selawik Valley, Seward Peninsula, on down across just about all the Bering Sea, some marginal VFR in areas of the Aleutians, but conditions pretty low. VFR persisting in Bristol Bay, but marginal VFR in over the Kuskokwim Delta and Valley, or up to the Kuskokwim Mountains, not into the Kuskokwim Valley. Still VFR there for the start Monday, as well as the eastern areas on down across the Panhandle. And then for Monday afternoon, VFR, southeast coast, Gulf of Alaska, Bristol Bay, Kodiak, North Gulf Coast, right on up to the Brooks Range, to the interior, IFR Arctic coast, out here to the west along the coast, and really pretty well socked in with IFR for the Bering Sea, and to a lesser extent for the Aleutians. Passes for tomorrow, both Anatuvik and Adigan up in the Brooks Range, good VFR, wide open for Lake Clark and Merrill, rainy, ceilings visibilities probably unlimited, for windy also, and that forecast would hold for Isabel as well. And Mentasta, again, clear skies, sunshine, Tanita, clear skies, VFR for Portage, Chilkoot and White, VFR. And for the freezing levels tomorrow morning, at the surface over here over the eastern interior, down to about the eastern Alaska range in the 40-mile country, with the free air freezing levels here, 6,000 feet over Canada, sloping up as you get out toward that upper level ridge. Quite warm air aloft, a fair distance to the north here, 14,000 feet there up off the, or along the Russian coast, 12,000 feet extending southward along the ridge axis here to the central Aleutians. And for icing, shaping up like this, not much, none out west, none over the interior. Eastern Arctic coast, there some moisture with a trough could produce some areas of really just light rime icing, I believe. And then down here over the southern southeast coast with that upper level low and the showers, moisture above about 8,000 feet, light to very isolated mixed icing. And then for the upper air chart, there's that upper level low. It's keeping it unsettled over the southern Panhandle tomorrow and tonight. High pressure out over the Bering Sea. Kind of a split flow here. You got jet up and over the top, strongest branch hanging off to the southeast there into the Mackenzie River Bay area. Another one breaks off, and we've got 80-knot northerlies here coming down across the western interior and Bristol Bay. 9,000 feet, showing 30-knot winds with a low southwest of the Queen Charlotte's here off the or along the coast of Prince of Wales Island, or 25 to 30 over the southern panhandle, lighter to the north, pretty light northerlies predominantly here in the interior, maybe a little brisker out to the west, but not all that bad. 30 to 40 there on the eastern Arctic coast. Easterlies 15 to 20 here along the Aleutians at 3,000 feet, but significantly stronger just to the south. High pressure, light winds Bering Sea, north to northwest or so, 5 to 15 in the interior. 30-knot winds there for the southern panhandle. Turbulence to go along with that, we've got some moderate chop below 4,000 feet over the southern southeast coast, and also out here over the central and western Aleutians. And after the marine forecast, I'll be back, or after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
The Space Weather Prediction Center has had a long-standing relationship with the power industry, so they've been aware that solar storms, the geomagnetic storm piece of that, can affect the operation of their systems and induce extra currents and loads on those systems that can either trip those systems offline or in the worst of cases, cause damage. That relationship goes back for several decades. In fact, a big incident in 1989 where part of Quebec was tripped offline that affected something like 6 million customers for about 9 hours. I think that really raised the awareness in the power industries.
When we get the alert, we watch the grid and start looking for issues. Are we seeing a decline in voltage? Are we seeing equipment failures? And we readjust the system to try to mitigate those problems, try to keep the lights on and keep it from going out.
Averaging about 500, 550 kilometers per second.
If we didn't have this early warning, we wouldn't see it until our sensor saw it. Getting more information quicker and faster before the storm hits, not during the storm, is a big improvement.
In the long term, I think what we need and what we're moving toward, the U.S. as a whole, is better modeling, fully understanding this phenomenon, understanding how it would impact specific systems.
Rather than actually experiencing a storm, we can simulate storms in our software and see what the impact is. We try to get ahead of it. We always plan that if there's an outage, how can we keep the lights on? What's the best process to prevent it?
In the end, 5 to 10 years from now, there's going to be a whole mix of operational procedures driven by what we do on prediction and warning. And then there also will probably be some level of hardware controls to ensure the reliability of the grid.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
There's different types of impacts on communication systems, and the HF we call the high frequency, which is that band of communications 3 to 30 megahertz. But it's a very important band of radio communication because it's used widespread. It's used, for example, by the airlines.
HF radio is most commonly used for position reporting when you're going across the ocean airspace, which is devoid of radar. And ATC can't see you, so it's up to you to report your position and your altitude and your speed.
HF works great most of the time, except during a big flare. And during a big flare, that HF communication capability could be gone within a minute or two. So as soon as we see something happening in there, or we see a flare, it's one of the first things we do is alert the aviation community, hey, big flare, HF's going to be impacted.
Once we know that there's an event going on, then the aviation industry and the airlines can react to that. They can alter their routes over the poles. They can lower the altitudes that they're flying at, or maybe decide not to fly at all in the interest of the passenger safety.
So that's just one example of how HF is used, but the emergency response community will use it a lot too. It's one of their primary backups.
When you've lost connectivity between certain government agencies, it gives you that long-range coverage to talk from out-of-state to federal governments or from the FEMA locations to the state emergency operations centers.
So if you've got a big hurricane impact in the coastline, whatever big city, we've got the cell towers down and whatnot, we've got emergency communication folks in there. Those folks are very familiar with space weather and how it impacts their systems.
Here in recent years, it was used during Katrina when we had a lot of communications outages down there. It was also used during Hurricane Ike. There was an outage of the telephone circuits with the Texas State Emergency Office, so it was used in both of those situations.
So when we talk about backup, especially for the airlines, typically they'll have SATCOM, so it'll be satellite communication.
The satellite technology that emergency responders use could be GPSs, could be satellite phones, satellite data terminals.
Space weather events can impact SATCOMs. The impact can range from a nuisance to loss of a spacecraft. So we will give them the heads up. If we have space weather events, flares, whatnot, they need to know what's impacting their systems. Situational awareness is key. Time is of essence to these folks. Again, it's life and death.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot of difference from yesterday. Still in close to the coast from about Prudhoe Bay on off to the east. And this area holding pretty well in a stationary status quo, although it looked a little thinner than the last time they saw it, which was some time ago. And moving on to the marine forecast here. Good gales coming into the south coast for the day tomorrow with 40 knots out of the east, 13-foot seas. Small craft advisories here for the central coast, 25 to 30 knot winds, seas up to 10 feet, and 20 knots out of the north on the north coast. Still a good stiff northerly wind in Lynn Canal today. I believe they had gusts Eldred Rock, or for tomorrow, Eldred Rock today seeing gusts like 45 miles per hour or so. Well, that's going to continue through tomorrow. It seas at about 6 feet. Small craft advisories also out for Stevens Passage and southeast 20 for Clarence Strait. And then for Monday, winds diminish, northeast 20 knots on the south coast, light northerlies 15 knots with 5 to 6 foot seas on up to the north, and still hold on to the small craft advisories. Lynn Canal, north 25, 5 foot seas, north 20 Stevens Passage, north 15 for Clarence Strait. And for the North Gulf Coast, north to northwest at about 10, north 15 for Prince William Sound with 3 foot seas. Cook Inlet, north winds at 10 with pretty slight seas, 2 feet or less. Northwest 15 for Kamishak Bay, turning west at 20 for the Barren Islands. And the Monday forecast, variable winds, the North Gulf Coast at 10 knots with 4 foot seas. Northwest 10 for Prince William Sound. No change for Cook Inlet here, and west 15 for Kamishak Bay, turn northwest there for the Barren Islands. Kodiak Island, southwest for Shelikof Strait zone, northwest at 15 for both zones, 3 to 4 foot seas through the day tomorrow. Northwest 15 here for the Bristol Bay zone with 2 foot seas, and from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, 15 knots out of the northwest. Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest, only at 10. And then for Monday, northwest 15 here for the peninsula, 3 to 5 foot seas, northwest 15 for Bristol Bay, on down across the range there, southwest of Sitkinak, and west-northwest for Kodiak, roughly at about 15 knots, 3 to 5 foot seas. Eastern Aleutians for the Unalaska Island, northeast 15, Umak Island picking it up, 20-25, Adak and Atka, small craft advisories, 25 to 30 knot winds, seas as high as 11 feet, northeast 30, diminished to 20 out over the far western zone. And then those continue to drop off, east 15 on Monday, but we're looking at small craft advisories here, roughly from about Amchitka Island into the Adak and Atka area, and a little bit lighter on the north shore there, with even lighter winds diminishing down to 10 knots from the east for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, north winds at 15, north 10 for the Pribilofs, north of the island, west 15, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, 10 knots in Norton Sound, west 15 for St. Matthew Island. Outlook for Monday, light winds there in Norton Sound, west 15, St. Lawrence Island, northwesterlies here along the coast, 10 to 15. Not too bad, 2 to 3 foot seas, light winds for the Pribilof, southwest 15 there for St. Matthew Island. Moving on up to the north to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast there. That's where the winds will be the strongest. Out of the west, 20 to as high as 25 knots, or it will be 25 knots. Small craft advisories there for the eastern zone. And light northerlies here for the central and west coast, all the way down to Cape Thompson. Cape Thompson down to the Bering Strait west at about 15. And they'll swing around out of the south at 15 knots all the way up to Cape Beaufort. And then light southerlies on the west side, southeast only at 10 for the central coast. And now the winds swing around to the east, but only at about 10 knots there, with seas down to 2 feet or ice cover there along the Prudhoe Bay area. And then for tonight, looking at some moisture, should stay off the coast there, real light moisture, IFR fogs, low clouds and occasional drizzle, possible drizzle along that trough here through the Bering Strait to maybe St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, clear skies over interior Alaska, diminishing winds in the channeled areas here like the Matanuska Valley, Valdez, Seward, coming down tonight from the breezy conditions they had today. And this system keeps a chance of rain. In fact, this is one that will result in the gale warnings later tonight and tomorrow there for the southeast coast. As you can see, that's where the best chance of rain will be. Sun to the north, sun in the interior. And Monday, sunny, high 60s to lower 70s to Sitna Valley.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.